Okay. So hi everyone and welcome to this roundtable as part of WTIN's Innovate Textile and Apparel Virtual Trade Show. I'm Fiona Harron, the Technical Textiles Editor and Team Leader at WTIN, and I will be moderating this second session on advances in biodegradable textiles, where we discuss some further solutions for tackling textile waste and driving a circular economy, besides crucial testing and quality standards. So in today's roundtable, I am joined by Mark Kaminski, Business Development Manager, Thermal Insulation at Freudenberg Performance Materials. Mark will be discussing Freudenberg's comfortemp Lyocell padding, developed in partnership with Lenzing, which is said to be the first 100% biodegradable padding made from sustainably produced cellulose that fully degrades in just under 60 days. Our second speaker is Alistair Drew, International Business Development Director, Hong Kong at Intrinsic Advanced Materials. Alistair will offer some insights into the company's CiCLO technology, which allows polyester to biodegrade in various environments at similar rates to natural fibres. And our final speaker is Dr. Timo Hammer, CEO at Hohenstein Institute, who will be discussing Hohenstein's biodegradable quality label and the criteria that textile products should adhere to in order to obtain this certification. So welcome everyone, and thanks for joining me today. And many people are of course calling for sustainable and biodegradable fibres to become mainstream in all future textile collections. And Mark, starting with you, this latest development that I mentioned from Freudenberg Performance Materials will certainly help to achieve that goal. So can you start by telling us when you started development on the comfortemp Lyocell padding and why you decided to use cellulose?
Well, number one, I think it's important to know that we are actually rebranding the name of our product. We are changing from comfortemp Lyocell to the name comfortemp Tencel. Now, Tencel is a brand of Lenzing, and we will be using exclusively Tencel fibers. We have been recycling plastic bottle basically forever. Since 1991, we are the largest recycler of PET bottles in Europe. We recycle somewhere around 7 million bottles every day. These are being used for fibers, for pellets, for technical uses, for apparel, obviously, just as well. And this stems from one of our values. Freudenberg very much is a value-driven company, and one of our values is avoid waste at all costs. This is a value actually from 170 years ago, so it's pretty old, but still works for us. And since 1991, we've been recycling, as I said. Now, we have had many customers requesting two more products. One request that we always had, and we have this product on the market already, is a product that would be suitable for a C2C product. And that means we actually use PA, nylon, for that use. But the larger request had from our customers was that we needed a product that is biodegradable and actually stemming from resources that are regrowing. So the customers wanted sustainable resources, they wanted a better life cycle assessment, and they wanted at the same time, if possible at all, to resolve this whole microfiber. So we came up with the idea of using cellulose fibers, because we have tried this, frankly said, in our own backyard, in our own garden, to compost cellulose fibers, and that had worked excellently. So here we go. This then obviously ended somewhere around 2.5 years ago in a development process, which took us much longer, admittedly, than we expected, because it was much more difficult. Now, comfortemp Tencel is biodegradable within 60 days under normal Middle European conditions in the ground. That means if you take that padding, that insulation that we do, and put that into the ground in Great Britain or in Middle Europe, Western Europe, even in Scandinavia, it will turn into compost within 60 days. What we need is obviously a moist surrounding, a moist earth around it if possible, and of course also we need the bacteria that are the bacteria that will biodegrade the product. These are the same bacteria that biodegrade the leaves in our forests. Comfortemp textile will also biodegrade in seawater and in fresh water, but that takes a little longer. We think it takes somewhere around 120 days. Tests are still running, and we like to confirm our tests that we've done ourselves, always in third party with Hohenstein. So this will take a little bit longer to actually reconfirm this so that we can be sure that it is easily biodegradable in seawater as well. But with that, we resolve the complete microfiber question. So it is by far the most sustainable insulation right now that is available. We'll see what's going to come out. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And Alistair, despite this increasing shift to natural and renewable fibres in the textile industry, polyester continues to be widely used in the apparel market. And we've of course seen various initiatives to recycle polyester, but your technology takes this one step further by enabling it to biodegrade. So for our audience, can you just explain how the technology works?
Yes, sure. Thank you. I mean, it's a very, very complex science, and I'm not really that qualified to go into the absolute detail. But broadly, what we do as a business, CiCLO, we sell an additive to the polyester and, in fact, also now nylon fiber producers, and the additive embeds itself in the polymer structure. And it's a kind of mostly an organic macromolecule, and it sits there in the structure. And its job, when the fibers find themselves in contact with bacteria, either in the soil or in seawater or in landfill conditions, the bacteria interact with the surface, and the additive is encouraging them to consume polyester and nylon, in fact, as a food source. And those bacteria and the enzymes that are created form colonies and eventually will consume the plastic, which does take quite a long time. We know, as we say, we're reaching rates of biodegradation that is similar to some natural fibers like wool. So we've done tests, perhaps we'll come on to that later in terms of our testing regime. Done a lot of testing in the US against ASTM standards over, the longest test has been around 3.5 years. So it's working by attracting bacteria, basically. It's not N-oxidogradable, and it's not embedded enzyme technology. So this is a different kind of class of additive, which has been around for now 3 or 4 years at least. And a lot of brands are now, I think, accepting that the technology works and it is capable of doing its job. And a lot of brands are starting to develop products and conduct their own tests.
Excellent. And Timo, as more and more textile companies move towards bio-based products, I'm guessing this has driven the amount of inquiries you receive regarding standardization. So can you tell us more about the Hohenstein biodegradable quality label and outline the criteria you look for when awarding products with this certification?
Sure. So we started with this topic a couple of years ago already. And we got, you're right, we got increasing interests in that topic. So first of all, we checked the standard market, what is out there already. There are some standards out there which are mainly written for plastic materials or packaging, things like that. And the first task we had was actually to to create our own method, which is based on these standards, but which fits for textiles. So, for example, if you apply a method which was invented for plastic materials, and you apply that to cotton or viscose or whatever, where you have a much quicker biodegradation, you need to come up with new parameters and so on. So we started with that a couple of years ago, and we developed our own method for biodegradation in soils. That's how it all started, and then came up with a Hohenstein quality label labeling a biodegradability of materials. And today we only award this label for 100% natural fibers products. So this is a very limited number of products which can be tested. But we now, just a couple of weeks ago, increased the number of products being labeled or being able to be labeled by telling on the label improved biodegradability, which means if you have a product in the market already and you replace parts of it, or you do something on the product, for example, by additives or by replacing a plastic compound by a natural compound or whatever, you can get the label of improved biodegradability. And what are the parameters we do in the test? So following also the example of Mr. Kaminski from Freudenberg, a lot of customers want to have realistic biodegradation. So yes, we also do test in the ground out there under natural conditions if the customer wants us to. And this is also written in the test report, what kind of test was done. So this is very realistic, depending on the climatic parameters and so on. But we also do a lot of lab testing. So we have a standardized soil with standardized microbes, which is very, very important to have a comparability of different products. So we have a defined soil, defined climatic conditions, and this is the main difference from our test compared to some ASTM methods and so on. We do not test compostability, which is tested under pressure, under high temperature, and so on. What we do test is natural, realistic biodegradation, which means temperatures of 25 or 30 degrees centigrade, and natural soil, which is incubated with a microbe mixture we developed extra for this test. And in parallel, so we started, and our main business is biodegradation in soil, but in parallel we did establish and do validate testings in seawater and in freshwater, because many brands meanwhile want to have the whole package actually.
Yeah, of course. And secondly, I just wanted to touch further on the regulatory challenges associated with biodegradability. As with you, Alistair, your company has had the added challenge of California law prohibiting a plastic product from being labelled biodegradable. So how are you working to communicate your technology correctly to clients in order to respect the regulations?
Yeah, it is a challenge, or has been a challenge, which we've kind of overcome. The California law, as you correctly say, forbids any plastic from making a biodegradable claim. And in addition, the Federal Trade Commission in the US, I think, has got some challenging requirements as well. And on top of that, even if you're selling, items outside of California, and if they can be through the internet accessed, you have to be very aware of now the global reach of the internet, and seeing if you need to comply with California law if you're selling your products in California from overseas. So it is quite an interesting subject. And as a California company, we obviously want to respect that law. And talking to consumers, we also know that the whole subject of biodegradability is quite a sensitive one. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about what biodegradability means. So, in fact, we've actually decided to completely simplify the whole thing and focus on the emotional benefit that the consumer and many of us really want, and that's to focus on, looking at the benefit of these synthetic materials reducing the impact of microfiber pollution in the ocean, and that's really the kind of focus we're bringing, and our hang tag program will focus on that as a benefit. Reducing microfiber pollution in the ocean is probably going to be our tagline. We obviously need to back that up with some reason to believe, which is, I think, the marketing language behind that emotional benefit. For example, with Billabong launch earlier this year in April, we supported Billabong using our hang tag, and then we backed up with a lot of FAQs, frequently asked questions, on their website. So those that are really interested in the technology can access, if you like, the reason to believe, can access the technical data if they want to see it. And our own website shows the technical data as well. So we're not really making those biodegradable words as part of our claim.
Okay. And just, Timo, going back to you now, I mean, do you agree with what Alistair was saying about them being some confusion still over biodegradability, the term itself, and how does your test, would you say, help to improve the communication of biodegradable textiles?
Yeah, I absolutely do agree. So there's a lot of misunderstanding in the market and with the end consumers as well. So there are always the problems like mixing up the terms biodegradable, bio-based, compostable, and so on. And bio-based is not automatically biodegradable, so this is mixed up quite frequently. And if we use the term biodegradable, yes, indeed, what does that mean? There is no standard for textiles. And that, I think we'll come to that later on, but we are currently developing a standard which should be a worldwide standard then for biodegradation testing of textiles. And we do that together with the industry, but I'll come to that later on. Yes, and what does biodegradation mean? If you look at the technical data of different various products which are in the market currently, some of these use composting approaches, some of these use natural biodegradation, like the colleague from Freudenberg just explained. So it's not clear, and I understand that this might create problems from a regulatory standpoint and the claiming standpoint. If I claim biodegradable, what does that mean? So we tried with the quality label to have a first sense for the end consumer of what it means. And in the test report, which belongs to the label and which can be seen by the end consumer via the internet, you see the biodegradation parameters we are testing. And for example, to get our label, the product needs to biodegrade at least 90% over 12 months. And it needs to fulfill some additional criteria, like, for example, being not ecotoxic, for example. So we do some additional tests for the products which like to get the label. And yes, I think the need is huge, and timing is right for creating a standard together with the industry. And as Alistair mentioned, microfiber reduction, it's very, we need to see that in total. So biodegradation is very closely linked to microplastic. And we are also in the microplastic discussion, and we established a couple of tests to measure microplastic pollution. And we also are part of the Microfiber Consortium now, which is an industry-driven consortium. And also there, in parallel to biodegradation, we see some standardization approaches. So that the people are discussing about how to standardize testings to make everybody talk the same language, speak the same language. So hopefully we will get to this for biodegradation as well.
Mm-hmm. And Mark, what is Freudenberg's stance on this and achieving clarity in biodegradability?
What we actually did was a little bit on the different side. We started talking to the brands that we work already with on the rPET side, And they clearly said that they are not, what we got was, they're not even sure if they want a compostable product, a biodegradable product, a bio-based product. There was no clarity there. So we went back to the consumer, and in many ways, the consumer said, we did a survey, the consumer said, bio-based is great. Biodegradability to them means anything that is completely 100% biodegraded within 120 days. That was what we heard from the consumers. That actually made it extremely difficult for us to continue to work with our current product that we had at that point of time, and we needed to go back to the drawing board. Now that we have come up with a product that is biodegradable within less than 60 days, we can come up with hang tags, web page, the complete communication side, obviously also on the internet and on social media. That gives us the ability to give 100% security to the consumer that the product will biodegrade completely within a relatively short period of time. That being said, we still face similar problems because, let's face it, we need a moist surrounding, we need a moist environment for biodegradation. Now, when we go, for example, we have Spanish customers. When we go to places like, for example, Almeria, this is basically a desert. When we go to places like San Diego, this is basically a desert. We have very, very much concerns that the product will not biodegrade under these circumstances. And the same thing is true, for example, for the anything north of the Arctic Circle. We have customers up in Norway, Sweden, up there. The biodegradation process will probably take longer there than 120 days or even 60 days or 90 days because the summer is so short, the temperatures, suitable temperatures are so short, so that the biodegradation will take longer. Question is, how do we communicate this? Up to now, we communicate obviously to the vast majority of our customers using programs, using communication programs with our brand partners. So companies like Burton or VD, for example, these are our partners for the communicating this. At the same time, we like to keep a somewhat humble approach because we do not want to raise the bar too far in expectations with consumers, because it's always extremely difficult for a consumer who is not really into the subject to understand where problems may arise. So in general, we can say, trust is earned. The product works. We made sure that the product works by going to a third accredited, credible third-party institute, to Hohenstein, to find whether it does work. That being said, trust is earned means to the consumer, they want to use the product for a long time, day by day, and then at some point of time decide whether the life cycle is over or not. Leave it to the consumer.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the consumers now, because I also wanted to discuss COVID-19, the pandemic. And it's been said that consumers have been forced to rethink both their lives and their consumption patterns as a result, bringing new demands on textile and apparel brands. So this surely presents new opportunities for biodegradable solutions. So starting with you, Alistair, what steps do you believe the industry as a whole should be taking to work together on this?
COVID-19 has had an impact on our development, for sure. It's put some of our development back. A lot of the brands were focusing on their supply chain issues. So a lot of our development has stopped or slowed down. We're pleased to see that it's now back on track. So it's certainly not been forgotten. The sustainability drive by brands, it's not gone away. It's still there. So a lot of our development has come back. I think it is a long-term trend. I'm a little bit skeptical sometimes about whether the consumer really is interested and whether they will pay more for the products. But brands are definitely interested. Retailers are definitely interested. Certainly the leading ones are definitely interested. And there's probably more opportunities now because, you know, these masks, which are now starting to get discarded as they fall out of people's pockets. I live in Hong Kong and go out frequently on the trails, and I see, unfortunately, masks in the countryside. I'm sure they're going to get disposed of in incinerators or landfills. So I think at some point that PPE and the masks will demand further potentially biodegradable solutions. But it's a long-term trend. I can't see it going away. So we'll carry on working with leading brands that are interested in this technology.
Yeah. And Mark, what do you think about this?
Well, when we're talking about COVID impacting our business, especially when it comes to performance textiles has not felt as much of the impact as, for example, menswear has felt in the past. That being said, in general, the consumer, now that is us, the consumer is us after all, the consumer is taking more and more what I call a fortress position. That means stay at home, stay safe, stay healthy. If you go and want to exercise, go outside, do it by yourself. Team sports are not possible and probably will not be as popular. Staying safe, obviously, masks is a major thing. The one thing that I see is that with this fortress position that the consumer is taking is that they will want to take charge much more of their lives than before. So they really want to trust the brands and the products that they buy, that these products actually do perform the way they want and they think. And that includes, as I said, the life cycle of the product. At some point of time, they may want to get rid of it, and just throwing it away and seeing it end up on a dump without biodegradation is probably not what the consumer will want in the future. So this is why we're sitting here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Timo, what's your experience of this, and do you have any thoughts on the situation currently?
Yeah, so what we saw or see is that before the COVID pandemic, there was a lot of people in the industry, but also the consumers talking about the green topics. We have this big Green Deal by the European Union and so on. And then it kind of stopped immediately, and we are faced now with a lot of questions in terms of hygiene and medical and so on, which is clear. But I agree that I think the whole societies worldwide have kind of stopped, and that led to people thinking more about their lives and the whole thing and the planet and so on. And I think people also realized that less is something okay, or like we are now discussing via the web, and we are not meeting somewhere, and it works well. So this is just one example of where people might see that, okay, with less effort it also works. So I think people have started thinking about everything. To be honest, I think that the COVID will leave something behind in the society, but in the end, people will go back to their kind of normal lives because they want to go there. But I think that the basic thinking of what does our planet do, what can we do for the planet, I think that will even increase after. And so I think time is good now to discuss these things, and the consumers are getting more and more. Oh, sorry. Do you see me? Okay. Consumers are getting more and more sensitive for these green topics.
Yeah, of course. And as you've all demonstrated, collaboration will continue to be a key component in driving this change. And Mark, besides your partnership with Lenzing, what further partnerships are you seeking, particularly when it comes to sustainability?
Well, Freudenberg itself is a very, very large old company. We're around 50,000 people working in not only in the apparel side, but also in the automotive side, sealings, filtration, medical products. For us, collaboration in many ways is easier, especially on the R&D side, than for anybody else probably, because all we usually have to do to find some kind of new inspiration for a challenge that we're facing is pick up the phone and call a colleague, because that colleague will inevitably know somebody else in the business unit next door, or in the business unit in India or in China or in the US, to somehow tackle the next challenge. So this is in many ways the cooperation that we do every day. Our sentence that we work with is innovating together. Freudenberg means innovating together. Now, that still does not cater to the market, because the market obviously has its own requests. So what we do is we do panel surveys with our customers, and then we start actually working on challenges together before. Once again, this innovating together situation is going towards our customers. And we take, especially on the sustainability side, this approach of what we call footprint, which you probably know, of course, leaving less CO2, for example, and at the same time handprint, because we want to give our customers, the brands that we work with and the manufacturers, we want to give them the ability to use less materials, to be more sustainable, and leave less of an imprint in the society, in our environment as well. So this does mean at the same time working with the brands, and at the same time obviously working with the manufacturers as well. And we do have, that's the big good part about Freudenberg, is we do have the staff to do it, because we're not just a company that is present in one place, but we're a global company.
Mm-hmm. And Alistair, I understand that your company has partnered with several industry players, including Polytech and Cone Denim. I know you spoke about Billabong earlier, to incorporate CiCLO into collections. So how are these partnerships going, and how have they helped you to solve industry challenges?
Well, we absolutely totally rely on partnerships, really. I mean, I started out 4 or 5 years ago. We were quite a small Californian company, and we've had to rely on our relationships with both brands, testing centers, and also manufacturers themselves that make the fibers. So we've got a lot of collaboration. We're very lucky that our joint venture partner is now Parkdale Mills, and Parkdale Mills is one of the largest yarn spinners in the world. I think they've got 20-something plants across the Americas, and they've been absolutely brilliant. They've opened lots of doors to some major retailers in the US. They've also helped us with our manufacturing footprint in terms of our relationships with certified manufacturers. So we've now got 21 certified manufacturers in 9 countries. But really, it's the partnerships with the brand that is really important. Obviously, biodegradable products, as we've already heard, they take a long time to biodegrade. That means the testing can take a long time. And that means we need strong partnerships with brands that really believe in the technology and are willing to dedicate resources and money and time into conducting these tests all over the world. But there are a lot of people that really are a little bit afraid of new technology, or a little bit afraid of innovation, and that can be a barrier to adoption. A lot of people want to follow. Not very many people are brave enough to lead. But we do have a few partners like Billabong, who've launched board shorts earlier in the year. Cone Denim has been an early adopter. In fact, the denim industry actually is really starting to adopt our technology, which is fantastic. We've got other partnerships we can't really talk about, pretty confidential. But I think in the next year and a half, 2 years, you'll see a lot more brands in the public domain, a lot more wholesalers start to talk about CiCLO. But partnerships for us are absolutely critical right the way through the supply chain.
Of course. And Timo, I know you mentioned earlier on about Hohenstein joining the microfiber consortium last year. And so I'm guessing sort of initiatives like this, they've helped to strengthen your knowledge base.
Absolutely. My standpoint always is that it doesn't make any sense if a testing lab or a research facility like we are invents new things or whatever without talking to the industry. Everything we do is for the industry. And that's also if we do the testing, for example, we see the customers not only as customers but as partners, because without communication, without really talking about what is your product doing, what is the claim you are aiming for, what are the specialties about your product, how do you want to differentiate it to other products, and so on. This is so very important. And what we do see in the Microfiber Consortium is that talking about possible new standards of testing. So talking about how do we do that? How can we be all on the same page is so very important. And we are very happy with the Microfiber Consortium. And I can announce here that we also found already some partners for the Biodegradation Consortium. Freudenberg is one of these. So last year in November, I talked on a conference in Germany about this topic, and I just asked the audience, like, and if you want to join and if you want to be part of standardization of biodegradation for textiles, please let me know. And after the talk, I got a lot of emails like, okay, we are interested, we're interested, we're interested. So what we are coming up with now in autumn, it was a little bit delayed by COVID, but we will come up with it now, is a standardization approach, and we will also be looking for further partners for that. So yes, partnership, communication is very, very important, especially as a testing lab. If you do anything without talking to the industry, without the people really needing it in the end, you're lost.
Yeah, definitely. And to conclude, I'd just like to ask you all about future developments. So Alistair, how are you continuing to test your technology, and what further goals are you hoping to achieve within the next couple of years?
I think the key for us, I think Timo was already talking about this, it's trying to unite the industry somehow. We're using a ASTM standard to measure biodegradation of microfibers in seawater, which is a test method, tells you how to conduct the test. And we really need to kind of agree with the laboratories exactly how to do that, because the test is clear about how to do it, but there's still quite a lot of variation, whether that's the equipment that's used, the way the gas is measured or collected, the way the inoculum is collected, treated, grown. We need to try and unite these things, and we're already doing a lot of that in the US. We've got a laboratory we've been using for a number of years. We're working with California State University. We're working with a government organization in the US to try and kind of standardize these tests. We're in touch with the Taiwanese Textile Research Institute, the Hong Kong Productivity Council, laboratories in Beijing. So we need to try and knit all these things together and try and make a common approach, or understand the differences that are already sort of emerging from one lab to another. And I think that's really our goal. We've been very clear about kind of making sure that our technology is used in a sort of real world environments, as people have already said. We're looking at microfiber that goes into the ocean, or fibers that go into landfill. We're not really focused on composting, because a lot of textiles don't really go into composting. So we're focusing on real world applications, I think, and trying to meet and unite the industry around those.
Mm-hmm. And Mark, I know you mentioned at the beginning Freudenberg is intending to change the name. Did you say comfortemp tensile padding as opposed to Lyocell? And so what's next then in terms of future developments for the innovation?
Tensile itself is hydrophilic, which actually is a pro and a con for us. So what we did with this product was make it hydrophobic. The result out of this was that we suddenly had a product which had excellent moisture management. This is one of those things that we really love about bio-based products, that we can change a lot more than we have ever thought before when it comes to, for example, Tencel. When we look at future projects, our biggest project by far is we want to move our whole company, certainly in the apparel side, but I see this all over Freudenberg, to a business that is using just a lot more sustainable fibers. Now, when you, for example, consider microfibers, this is a typical example. Microfibers are not only created through textiles and apparel, but a lot of the microfibers are coming from automotive use. Now, wouldn't it be great to create a product, a technical textile that replaces the microfibers with, for example, a cellulosic fiber that will then biodegrade? That is one of those typical things that we do. By now, our apparel side is nearly 100%. We're somewhere around 95% sustainable. So it's either rPET or PA that has been recycled, or as we're talking now, Tencel. We want to change that to 100% in a very, very short period of time. We're thinking there in months. We're not thinking about years. Then in general, temperature management, obviously, as the next project that we're looking at, is a little bit more on the difficult side on the heat management. Now, insulating us from the surroundings, we've been doing this forever. Since we've lost hair, we've been using apparel and clothing. Insulating us against heat and sun is much, much more difficult, as you're probably aware. This is one of those huge projects that we're working on currently. And then, of course, our classic project is always replacement of natural down. Natural down is not what we think as a sustainable product in many ways. So we would like to replace that product into a product that is much easier care, much easier to use, made of either rPET or, for example, of Tencel or cellulosic fibers. These are the big projects that we're looking at in the future. Now, obviously, there are some projects that we may not just share, but basically this is the line where we're going.
Sounds good. And Timo, with your testing standards, I'm guessing that this is something you have to keep developing and updating as the industry evolves. But in terms of future outlook, what further materials or technologies do you believe we could explore to speed up the biodegradation of textiles and help close the loop?
I think also now there are many very promising approaches out there to either replace plastic-based fibers by natural-based fibers, but sometimes this is not possible. So there are new developments out there, and we heard some of these before, which is very, very interesting. On the other hand, what we unfortunately also see in the market is claims which are not proven actually. So where the material itself was somehow changed or whatever, and people claim that it's now biodegradable without really proving it. So I think we are all on the same page if we say, okay, I think there are a lot of promising approaches out there which we don't even know so far. And I think the main thing is to make them comparable. So are they really biodegradable? Can it be proven? And how are the conditions and so on? And to be transparent, to be honest, to say, yes, this product biodegrades in soil, but it will take 2 years, full stop, or whatever. So I think, yes, there's a lot of movement at the moment, also from a technology standpoint, and we heard 2 technologies today which are very promising. So I think we will see a lot more approaches. There are a lot of companies out there, and I think it's also from an economic standpoint an interesting thing to invest in these technologies. So aiming for a common standard for textiles is my aim actually, and to make all these technologies comparable.
Exactly, brilliant. And that's been really interesting. Thanks everyone for your time today. Thanks to those of you who have tuned into today's roundtable. We look forward to welcoming you at our other roundtables here at ITA Virtual Trade Show. Take care everyone, and I'll see you soon.